Whoa, okay, 1 in 4. That's how many teenage girls have experienced major depression. I mean, that number is huge,
Right.
right? It really got us thinking about how much childhood has changed, like drastically changed.
Yeah. So it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds, especially with
Yeah.
all the stuff about smartphones and social media. And we found this really interesting article. It's by Academy of Ideas. It's called "The Great Rewiring of Childhood," and it's kind of a deep dive into how these technologies are really shaping an entire generation.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like, this isn't just about, missing out on some good old-fashioned fun. We're talking about, like, potential long-term consequences for mental health and development.
Absolutely, this is like serious stuff.
Yeah, I mean, think about it for a second. 2007, the iPhone comes out. And
Yeah.
it wasn't just like a new gadget, it was like a total cultural earthquake. All of a sudden, we're all expected to be like constantly digitally connected. Right, so for Gen Z, those born between like the mid 90s and the early 2010s? This is their entire reality. No more playing outside until the streetlights come on. It's all about screens.
Yeah, and this article, it doesn't hold back at all.
Hmm.
Like, it directly links this shift to some really alarming mental health trends that we're seeing right now.
Okay, so lay it on us. What kind of trends are we talking about?
So since 2010, teen depression rates have jumped 150%. Self-harm rates for young girls have tripled. And get this, by 2023, 37% of university students are reporting constant anxiety.
Wow. Yeah, those they're really sobering. It makes you wonder how much of this can really be traced back to smartphone use.
Well, and that's where this article gets really fascinating,
Hmm.
because it argues that social media in particular is actually designed to be addictive. Like, we're talking the same kind of techniques that they use in slot machines, exploiting our brain's reward systems.
So it's not just that teens are choosing to spend all their time online, but the platforms themselves are engineered to keep them hooked.
And it gets even more concerning because the article cites these internal documents showing that these companies are intentionally targeting teenagers
Yeah.
and, their vulnerabilities.
Okay, now that's unsettling, because knowing how impressionable young minds are we basically just handing them a recipe for addiction?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that the frontal cortex, the part of our brain that handles self-control and decision-making, it's not fully developed until after age 20.
Yeah.
So you have this like perfect storm of, highly addictive technology and brains that are still developing.
And to make things even more complicated, this is all happening during adolescence, a time when social pressures and self-esteem are already like front and center.
Exactly. And that's where the social comparison aspect of social media
Right.
really becomes a huge factor, especially for girls.
Yeah, because it's not just about, staying connected anymore. It's about presenting this perfect filtered version of yourself.
Right. You have to look a certain way, be
Yeah.
a certain way. And the article argues that, this constant exposure to these like idealized images,
Hmm.
which are often heavily edited, that this distorts beauty standards and it fuels anxiety and self-doubt
Right.
and even depression.
It's like the magazine ads of the past, but like on steroids. 204/7 right in their pocket.
Right there all the time. And this brings up something I was thinking about. Remember how much time we spent just playing outside as kids, like running around, making up games, figuring things out on our own.
Yeah, those are the days I feel like I learned so much from just playing with my friends. No adults around to tell us what to do. What about you?
Absolutely. Like that unstructured playtime,
Mhm.
it was crucial for developing all these skills like problem solving,
Yeah.
resilience, social intelligence, all that stuff you can't really learn from a screen.
Right, and the article highlights that, how screen time is actually replacing those crucial experiences. Like the average teen now spends 6 to 8 hours a day in front of screens, and almost 5 of those hours are on social media alone.
Yeah, so we're not just talking about a potential mental health crisis.
Yeah.
We're also talking about a developmental one.
Yeah, it's like we're raising a generation that's digitally fluent, but
Yeah.
they're kind of lacking some of those fundamental skills and experiences that helped us, thrive.
Yeah, and another alarming trend is this constant barrage of notifications that these kids are facing. Like Gen Z is getting an average of 192 notifications per day.
192. Wow, that's like having a digital tack on the shoulder every few minutes. No wonder focus and attention spans are taking a hit.
Yeah, and it's not just about the distractions. This fragmented attention can actually hinder skill development. Deep focus, the ability to really absorb knowledge. And it makes you wonder, what does that mean for their learning, for their future careers?
And it's not even just about academics, right? Think about relationships. All this time online, and yet loneliness is on the rise. It seems kind of counterintuitive.
It really does. And the article kind of digs into why that is. It points out this really important difference between superficial digital connections and the depth of in-person relationships.
So even though they might have thousands of online friends, they're really missing out on those real-world interactions that build genuine connection.
Exactly. Like face-to-face, we learn to read body language. We learn empathy, how to pick up on subtle cues, all these things that are really hard to replicate online.
Right. It's like we're trading the richness of real-life interaction for this constant stream of digital noise.
Yeah, and that trade-off. It might be coming at a really steep cost, not just for Gen Z, but for society as a whole.
Okay, so we've kind of painted a pretty bleak picture here, but before we spiral into complete despair, let's shift gears a bit. Knowing what we know now, what steps can we take to actually foster healthier relationships with technology?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll explore further in our next segment.
Okay, so we talked about some of the potential downsides, but let's be real. Technology is here to stay. It's not about, ditching our devices altogether. It's about finding a healthier balance. But where do we even begin?
Right? It's like a big question. I think the first step is awareness. Both for ourselves and for younger generations. We really need to understand, like, how these technologies actually work, how they're designed to capture our attention, and, the potential impact they can have on our minds.
Right. It's like anything else. The more we know, the better equipped we are to make informed choices. But how do we actually translate that awareness into action?
Well, the article suggests a few different approaches. One is setting limits on screen time, both for ourselves and for our kids. It's about creating healthy digital habits, just like we try to create healthy eating habits.
Right. It's not about banning technology altogether. It's about being mindful and intentional with how we use it.
Exactly. Think of it as creating a balanced digital diet.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let our kids eat candy all day long.
Right.
We teach them about portion control, balanced meals, the importance of nutritious foods. Why not apply that same logic to technology?
Yeah, that's a great analogy because it's not just about what we consume. It's about, the habits we form, the role technology plays in our lives.
Absolutely, and a big part of that is being mindful of our own technology use. Kids are incredibly perceptive. They pick up on our habits, our attitudes. If we're constantly glued to our phones, they'll see that as normal behavior.
So leading by example is crucial. But for parents specifically, what are some practical steps they can take?
Well, the article suggests a couple of things.
Hmm.
One is creating tech-free zones in the house, like the dinner table or the bedrooms. It's about reclaiming those spaces for connection, for face-to-face interaction.
You're right, and maybe putting our own phones away during those times too. It's hard to tell your kids to unplug if you're constantly checking your notifications.
Yeah, exactly. Lead by example. Another suggestion is scheduling in tech-free time for activities you enjoy, both for yourself and as a family. Go for a hike, play board games, cook dinner together, anything that gets you interacting in the real world.
Yeah, it's about remembering that there's a whole world out there beyond the screens, a world that's full of beauty and adventure and connection.
Right? And it's about showing kids that they can have fun and learn and grow without being constantly plugged in. But, it's not just about limiting the bad. It's also about maximizing the good.
Right, because technology can be an incredible tool for learning, connecting, creating.
Absolutely. And the article emphasizes the importance of teaching kids how to use technology in a healthy and productive way. It's about empowering them to be critical thinkers, to question what they see online, and to be aware of the potential for manipulation and misinformation.
Yeah, it's those critical thinking skills that can help them navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape.
Exactly. And it's about encouraging them to use technology for good. To connect with people who share their interests, to learn new things, to advocate for causes they care about.
So it's about finding that balance, right? Embracing the potential benefits of technology while also being mindful of the risks.
And recognizing that technology is a tool, not a master. We have the power to control how we use it, and we have a responsibility to use it wisely, especially when it comes to our children.
Right, it's like we're navigating uncharted territory here. There's no roadmap for raising kids in the digital age. But if we approach it with awareness and intentionality and a willingness to learn and adapt, I think we can find our way.
I agree. It's a process. We'll make mistakes along the way, but the important thing is to keep the conversation going, to keep learning, and to keep striving for that balance.
And to remember that it's not just about our kids, it's about us too. We all need to find ways to create a healthier relationship with technology for our own well-being and for the well-being of society as a whole.
That's a really powerful point. Because in the end, it's not about demonizing technology. It's about reclaiming our agency, about making conscious choices about how we want technology to shape our lives.
Okay, so we've talked about awareness, setting boundaries, leading by example. But I'm wondering, are there any specific activities or practices that can help foster those essential skills and experiences that are kind of getting lost in the digital age?
Yeah, absolutely. The article really emphasizes the importance of bringing back those real-world experiences that are so crucial for development, encouraging kids to play outside, get involved in sports or clubs, volunteer in their communities, anything that gets them interacting with the world and with each other in a meaningful way.
Right. It's about fostering those social skills, that resilience, that sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on likes and followers.
Exactly. And those activities don't have to be complicated or expensive. It could be as simple as playing board games as a family, going for a bike ride together, or working on a creative project together.
Right. It's about creating those shared experiences that build connection, foster creativity, and teach those essential life skills.
Exactly. And it's about encouraging exploration and curiosity. Let kids get messy, make mistakes, and learn from their experiences. That's how they build resilience and develop a sense of agency.
So it's about finding ways to balance the safety and convenience of the digital world with the challenges and rewards of the real one.
Right. And it's about remembering that childhood is a time for wonder, for discovery, for growth. Let's create spaces where those things can flourish, both online and offline.
As we're talking about all this, I keep coming back to this idea of stagnation that the article mentioned. It said that feeling stuck, lacking a sense of purpose, is a major contributor to depression and anxiety.
It is a fascinating point.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if part of the reason young people are feeling so stagnant is because they're spending so much time in these curated, controlled online environments.
It's like they're missing out on those real-world experiences that challenge them, that help them grow, that give them a sense of direction.
Right? It's like living in a digital echo chamber, surrounded by information and opinions that just reinforce their existing beliefs and biases.
And without that exposure to different perspectives, to challenging experiences, it's easy to feel lost, uncertain about who you are and where you fit in.
Yeah, it's like they're missing out on those crucial moments of friction that spark growth and change.
Hmm?
Remember when we were kids, we learned through trial and error. We fell down, we got hurt, we made mistakes.
Yeah, and as tough as those experiences were, they taught us resilience, problem solving, adaptability.
Exactly. They helped us develop a sense of self-efficacy, the belief that we can overcome obstacles and achieve our goals.
But if we're constantly shielded from those challenges, if we're living in a digital bubble that filters out anything uncomfortable or unfamiliar, how do we learn those essential life skills?
It's a really valid concern, and it highlights the importance of creating opportunities for young people to push themselves beyond their comfort zones, to experience the world in all its messy, unpredictable glory.
So it's not about eliminating risk altogether. It's about finding healthy ways to challenge ourselves and grow.
Exactly, because it's often in those moments of discomfort, of uncertainty, that we discover our true strength and resilience.
It's a delicate balance, though, right? We want to protect kids from harm, but we also want to empower them to navigate the world independently.
And that's where open communication comes in, talking to kids about the risks and rewards of both the online and offline world, helping them develop critical thinking skills, and encouraging them to make informed choices.
Right. It's about equipping them with the tools they need to navigate this increasingly complex world, both digitally and physically.
Exactly, and trusting them to use those tools wisely.
Okay, so where do we go from here? We've talked about societal shifts, parental responsibility fostering essential skills, but what about the individual? What can each of us, regardless of our age or role, do to create a healthier relationship with technology? That's something I think we need to delve into.
I agree. It's a question that deserves its own deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about these big picture solutions, right? Like creating healthier digital environments, fostering those essential skills we were just discussing. But let's get personal for a minute. What can each of us do, like right here, right now, to start shifting our own relationship with technology?
I think that's a great question. I mean, it's where the rubber meets the road. Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by these huge societal trends and feel like you're powerless. But individual choices really do matter.
I agree with that because we can't always control, the technology around us, but we can definitely control how we interact with it.
Exactly. And, it all starts with awareness. Pay attention to how much time you're actually spending on your phone. How are you feeling when you're using social media? Are you using it to connect, to learn, to create?
Mm.
Or are you using it to escape, to numb out, to avoid difficult emotions?
Yeah. Are we scrolling mindlessly? Or are we engaging with intention? Are we comparing ourselves to others? Or are we focusing on our own values and goals?
Yeah, all good questions. And I think if you find yourself, feeling drained or overwhelmed or disconnected after spending time online, that's a pretty clear sign that maybe it's time to reevaluate those digital habits.
So, what are some concrete steps we can take? Like, where do we even begin?
Well, it could be as simple as deleting those apps that you know are just time sucks, or they
Mhm.
make you feel bad about yourself, or setting limits on your screen time. A lot of phones have those built-in features now. Or you can download an app that helps you track and manage your usage.
Yeah, those are great starting points. And I've also heard of people, scheduling in tech-free time, like designating certain hours of the day or certain days of the week
Yeah.
where they completely unplug.
That's a great idea. It's
Yep.
about, reclaiming those spaces in your life for activities that nourish you, that bring you joy, that connect you to the world around you. Go for a walk in nature, read a book, have a face-to-face conversation with someone you care about.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this whole deep dive for me is the importance of those real-world connections. They just can't be replicated online.
I totally agree. And those connections don't have to be these grand gestures. It could be something as simple as calling a friend instead of texting,
Yeah.
having dinner with your family without any screens at the table,
Huh.
or even just striking up a conversation with a stranger at the coffee shop.
Right. That's those small everyday interactions that kind of weave the fabric of our lives, that remind us that we're part of something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about remembering that we have the power to choose how we want to interact with the world, both online and offline. We can choose to be present, to be engaged, to be mindful.
We can choose to focus on what truly matters. Our well-being, our relationships, our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
I like that. In a world that's, increasingly dominated by technology,
Yeah.
those choices are more important than ever.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. What's one small step you can take today to create a healthier relationship with technology? It could be deleting an app, setting a screen time limit, scheduling in some tech-free time, or simply just being more mindful of how you're feeling when you're online.
Yeah, it's about taking back control, making conscious choices that align with your values and your goals.
Because ultimately, technology should serve us, not the other way around.
Well said.
And that's it for this deep dive into the great rewiring of childhood. Thanks for joining us.